Welcome to another episode of the Agronomy Highlights podcast. I'm Justin Brackenrich, and I'll be your host for today. And always, I'm joined by my co-host and colleague, Dwayne Miller. Dwayne, how are you this morning?
Justin, I'm a little toasty here in the eastern part of PA. I don't know about you, but it's a little warm, right?
So we're recording this on 7/1. I guess you can call this day 2 of a 4-day heat dome. We're looking at 98s over the next couple days. It's going to bring some heat, huh?
I'm wishing, what's that term? And when polar vortex. Where's the polar vortex when we need it?
Maybe they'll follow the heat dome.
That's right.
All right. So what are we going to do today, Dwayne?
All right. So this is our second go around of our crop conditions around the state. So we're going to talk to a few educators and just get a general gist of where crops are standing right now, what's happening around the state. And then we'll tackle one common question, timely information right around the date here that we're recording.
Yeah, it sounds like a good day. If you were with us last time for our first crop condition, you know we were joined. It was myself, it was Dwayne, Dr. Heidi Reed, and Aaron Kaprinka. So let's go back to Heidi and Aaron and let them do a quick introduction of themselves, remind us, and tell us where they're located. So Heidi, let's start with you.
Hello, my name is Heidi Reed. I'm the educator based in Lancaster County for the agronomy team. Good to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Kaprinka. I'm based out of Mercer County, and I represent the northwest portion of Pennsylvania. So I'm happy to be here as well.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us again. Let's just jump right into it. Dwayne, I'm going to start with you this morning. Why don't you give us the Schuylkill County, Carbon County cropping update?
Okay. Well, this week the weather is favorable for doing a lot of stuff, and it has been relatively dry over the last couple weeks. So haymaking was really cranked in full gear. A lot of guys are finished up with first cutting grass hay. If they're not finished up, they are just about wrapping up now. Second cutting alfalfa had started to come off. If you made that timely first cutting harvest, you're on a good schedule. That's happening as well. From the small grain side, I would say we are just about there for wheat harvest, likely happening or has happened. I have not seen a combine in my travels here in my two counties, but just to the south in Berks, combines are moving. Barley, I'll let Heidi talk a little bit about barley. They're more advanced down there in the Lancaster area than we are, but wheat ready to come off or started to come off in some areas. Corn has taken off in this heat. Boy, we did receive some nice needed moisture over the weekend, and now with that heat, the corn is really taken off. I'd say we are somewhere around V6 to V8 for an average corn height. Soybeans, they're a little bit of a different story. So almost everywhere I'm looking, we're seeing short beans, and it's carrying pretty much around the area. They have not started to flower yet. I would anticipate them to be at R1 very, very soon. Beans across the board, whether you planted them pretty early, whether you planted them mid-May, they seem to be pretty short. And that's a little bit what's going around my area.
Great. Thanks, Dwayne. Just as a side note, maybe could you explain a little bit of what like V1 or V6 or V2 means? Maybe just could you condense that to 30 seconds?
Sure. When we're staging corn, for example, and I'll say V5, that is, I can see 5 what they call visible collars on that corn leaf. And you can count those by starting at that very, very bottom leaf. Sometimes that leaf later in the year dies off or senesces, falls off somehow, but you still kind of count that. There's one at the very base of the ground, so that's 1. And then I usually alternate on that same side of the plant and go 1, 3, 5. As long as I can see that collar fully visible, I count that as well. So when we're talking soybeans, a V stage, V2, for example, would be 2 of the fully unfolded trifoliate leaves on that soybean plant. So as you go through the vegetative stages, you'll say, V1, V2, V6, V7. And as soon as you start to see flowers, we shift from vegetative to reproductive, and that would kick you into an R1 stage in the soybeans.
Great. Thank you. So I'm sure we'll talk more about the R's of this as we move through our crop condition scoring and our conversations in corn and beans. But thanks for giving us a little context. Let's jump to Heidi. He mentioned Heidi and barley. So let's travel a little south now.
Sure. So there's a lot that reflects a little farther north down here in the southeast, but some differences as well. So I can start with barley since you mentioned that. Yeah, barley harvest is wrapping up down here, and double crop beans following barley, or colloquially called barley beans, are in the ground or on their way to being planted. I have heard talk of some extremely good barley yields. Some farmers even saying their barley might out yield their corn this year, just with the timing of when the drought has come compared to rains. That is some good news, and quality seems to be pretty good on the barley as well. Wheat is, I just as of yesterday, so June 30th, just saw some wheat starting to be harvested around, and it looks like people aren't going whole hog with that yet. They're kind of testing to see if the moisture is where it needs to be. So stay tuned for reports about wheat. I am expecting yields to be significantly lower than average. With our wheat tour, we were estimating about 20% lower than average yield. So we'll see if that holds true at the scales. Then we have, depending on how guys are managing their alfalfa, they're between either second cutting or even third cutting. Right now, second cutting hay, there's a lot of hay that's been mowed and going to be baled up here in the next couple of days. Corn is at the point where I start ignoring vegetative station, just saying it's about shoulder high, right? I'm not counting leaves all that much at this point, but one note that I do want to bring up for corn is that we have had our first confirmed tar spot case in eastern Pennsylvania, according to Paul Easker. So a crop scout reached out to him the 4th week of June, and that has been confirmed. And apparently that's about 2 weeks earlier than it's ever been seen in Pennsylvania before. So just something for folks to keep in mind is to be out there and be scouting. Our weather conditions aren't going to be super conducive to tar spot formation here. It likes cooler, humid temperatures, and we have hot here with the heat dome, as he called it. So thankfully, we're not at pollination right now, and that heat might help us out with reducing tar spot. I haven't heard much else notable about the corn crop at this time besides, in terms of foliar disease, we'll be seeing gray leaf spot, northern corn leaf blight pop up here any day too. Soybeans, I saw my first soybean flowers the beginning of this week. So, we've passed the longest day of the year. That is going to trigger our flowering. And, folks here in North are going to be following suit. I think that is all for me.
So one note I want to add to that is if you're not familiar with tar spot, or if you'd like to kind of brush up on that a little, the Crop Protection Network has some great resources. And shamelessly, I'll tell you, there is an Agronomy Highlights podcast, Season 1, Episode 4, with Dr. Paul Easker and Alyssa Collins, kind of running through when to see it, what to do, how to scalp for it, and options that you may have. So thanks, Heidi. Aaron, let's jump over to you and what's going on in the West.
As far as the Northwest, we're going to step back a bit. As you know, that we're several weeks behind where Heidi just reported. And even in my counties, from Lawrence clear up to Erie, there's a big time gap there too, at least a couple of weeks. But overall, the weather here has been decent. It's been warm. We've been getting as much moisture as we need when we need it. The crops look decent. There are a couple of days where farmers pushed to get their crops in the fields where it wasn't really necessary. Obviously, they didn't know at that time. But looking back, they probably should have taken a day or two and gone fishing during those couple of days and then gone back to planting crops. But you can definitely tell those areas that the crops were pushed in a bit more. I also reported on another report, I feel as if this area, there's significantly more oats planted than there were before. A lot of the soybean ground has gone to oats. In terms of soybeans right now, we are V1 through V3 for the most part. And corn is anywhere, from emergence to V3. It's kind of all over the board. First cut has been pretty well wrapped up. There are a few stragglers out there. The quality that's left in the field is not necessarily ideal at this point. But I do think that a lot of first cut hay Even though some of the yields have been down because of the frost, a lot of the first cut hay looks decent for this area. Second cut, there is some concern the forage isn't quite as robust there as it should be. But overall, we're doing pretty well. We're doing pretty decent. Now, Mercer County, as compared to other counties in my area, Mercer County does have good soils, and Lawrence County is very good soils, and they can handle the fluctuations in the weather a little bit better than some of my other counties. That's it for me right now.
All right, thanks. So I'll wrap up. It's kind of interesting doing these. I think Heidi mentioned this of how far apart we all are and how different things can be, but how similar stuff is also at the same time, right? So small grains, we're very close to wheat, very close to triticale harvest. Our oats are starting to turn. So, over the next month, we're going to be very busy getting that stuff done. We have a huge range in beans, right? I think we're V1 to R1, and I think part of that is a function of replants. I think part of that's a function of the weather and deer damage. But I think Dwayne had mentioned that there's kind of a lot of shorter beans, and we're seeing that. Our corn looks pretty good considering our weather report, right? So I got on farm logs or bushels. That's what we use kind of here to track our fields and look at weather. And I reported this last time in Fayette County. We're up to 564 growing degree days, and in Washington County, we're at 957. I did the math here. 41% warmer, 35 miles away, right? And so we're seeing, and so if we do that for moisture, Fayette County is 23.6% drier than usual, while Washington's 8.4. So a 61% difference in moisture 35 miles away. And so if you kind of travel around over here and look at stuff, you're going to see corn in varying different heights, and I would say different degrees of maturity just because of our heat units and our moisture that we've had. Now looking forward, we mentioned some 90s, some 80s. The next few days, it's very low chance of rain, so we might start to see that curling happening. But later in the week and into next week, again, this is early July, we start to get those 60-80% chance of thunderstorms, and so then it becomes the haves and have-nots, right? Who got the thunderstorm this day and who didn't? So it's going to rain somewhere. You just hope it's at your place. Like they mentioned, alfalfa, if probably very close to starting second cutting if we haven't. And hay, I would guess we're probably 7 to 14 days away. I mean, I think we had a pretty good window in early June because volume's down. I think people are going to try and kick that down the road maybe longer than that 30 days they might usually wait. So we may hit that 40 or 45 day mark, but I'm guessing anytime over the next couple weeks, we'll get started.
One thing I forgot to mention is our second cutting grass crop is really short in our neck of the woods. Even if you put fertility to it, it's just it was sitting there waiting for some moisture. So I agree with you, Justin. I think folks are going to try to hold off as long as they can. The good thing right now with second cutting grass is we are not seeing disease development. Hot temperatures and relatively little moisture. We're not seeing that disease come into the orchard grass like it can. So fingers crossed that we get some moisture and a little bit more growth there as well.
And if you're one of those folks that's feeling like your second cutting was down, right? If our first cutting was lower and our second cutting is lower, we really have to start thinking about fall and wintertime, right? And how we kind of make up some of these differences. I would encourage you, again, just shamelessly, season 4, episode 21, we have a podcast episode on fertilizing after first cutting. But I think a lot of that would translate to fertilizing after second cutting if you're in a position where you need some extra forage.
Your memory bank guys, this is amazing. I'm listening to Justin just rattle off all these seasons and episodes. Yeah. You have these all filtered in the back of your filing cabinet in your head or what?
I wish I could No, I have 2 screens. My screen is over here and I just have this Rolodex. And while you guys talk, I just jot down notes really quickly so that I can come back and, but I appreciate you thinking I can handle all that.
Oh, if I could only be like you one day, Justin.
Oh, well, fingers crossed. You might grow up and be like me one day yet. Any other crop reporting information? I know sometimes when I hear other people talk, it jogs my memory for something I forgot.
The only thing that I would bring up that I failed to convey is that, you mentioned we're going to see drought stress with the heat and no rain. Even earlier this week was already seeing on thinner soils some curling of the leaves. So praying for rain Sunday, I guess.
Late June, I was in State College and I was thinking, we've had a lot of moisture here because as I drove out through those areas, I was seeing some curled corn and stuff. Now, looking at our weather report, I guess it's because we're cooler. Even though we're drier, we're still cooler. And I guess that's keeping us a little safer over here in the West. And while we're not seeing that so far, but it'll probably be a much different tale by the end of this week or moving into next.
Yes, I second that, Justin. I was in the fields yesterday and today, and the top of the soil is starting to crack in some areas. So, I mean, it's coming if we don't get a little bit of moisture. Also, just to point out, you said that we're so different and sometimes the same too. And in terms of wheat, I never mentioned wheat, but our wheat is scheduled, a lot of it, to come off next week if it hasn't. So that's pretty much the same as everybody reported here.
Something I just looked up. Well, yeah, I try to pick up something that Justin does here. As we're talking, I thought about, hey, what's this, the evapotranspiration rate of corn at V6. So at V6, corn is respiring and using a tenth to 1500ths hot weather. If it's windy, we could be up to 2/10 of an inch per day. So I think about it like, all right, oh man, we got almost half an inch on Saturday. Well, guess what? That hot weather.
That's 2 days.
That's 2 days and we're
Yep.
done, and to Heidi's point, my travels out to State College too, through Berks County. Some of those thinner soils, you saw some lawns browning and over the ridges, boy, that corn was starting to curl already. So just another thing to think about, as we get this corn crop going, and these crops are just trying to soak up everything they can. They do require, a significant amount of water.
Most people think fires start with flames, but they don't. Most flames start with heat. Control the heat, control the outcome. That's why Mark Twinoffel with Midwest Ag Risk Control focuses on one question: how fast can you control the heat? Around the farm or in the field, Mark recommends the Enforcer One system with Firebowl foam, built to cool fast, cling to surfaces, and stop reignition. To find out more about this system, call or text Mark at 618-521-6805 or online at enforcer.com.
Are you or your ag-related business interested in becoming a sponsor of the show? Support Penn State Extension's mission to provide trusted, research-based agronomy insights by sponsoring Season 4 of the Agronomy Highlights podcast. Advertising opportunities are available, and you can register directly or take a look at the sponsorship packages and pricing in the link below in the show notes. Feel free to reach out to me directly by emailing rms6953@psu.edu if you have further questions. Now, back to the episode.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. That was great. So let's move to our question portion. So the question we're going to talk about today, it might be one of those really big loaded questions of it depends answers, right? And I'm sure we're not going to satisfy every situation, but I think we're going to satisfy a couple answers. And I think we're going to give you something to think about as you start to move into answering this question. So our question is, I'm taking off wheat. We could call it small grains. It could be oats, barley, wheat. I'm taking these crops off. Should I spray after that to control weeds? And what cover crop should I plant? This is a huge question. Lots of real estate. I'm looking to see who wants to unmute first and jump in here. And I'm not seeing any takers.
Well, I'll go first, and admittedly, cover cropping is not my area of expertise, and thank goodness I think we have somebody in this group that has a real good rap on cover crops.
We picked these questions for a reason, right?
Well,
This isn't by
absolutely,
accident.
absolutely. So my brain immediately is going to forage because we talked already about, hey, first cutting may have been below average. Second cutting looks like it's below average. We went into winter maybe feeding more hay than we did last year. So hay stock may have been lower and prices higher. So my thoughts immediately going to, what if I've got animals to feed? What am I going to put in the ground that might get me some forage? So something that I would think about would be sorghum Sudan grass. Pretty quick establishment if we can get it in, get that small grain crop off quickly and get that done. We could get some significant tonnage out of something like that. Something else that we might be able to use might be an oats crop, grazing oats or something like that, or an annual ryegrass. So from a forage standpoint, maybe those are the ones that I would throw out as options. First part of the question, right?
That's okay. Yeah, I was going to lead you back there.
All right. Should we spray? Well, what's the extension answer? It depends.
Yeah, right.
I guess it would depend to me. I'm looking at it like, all right, if I have something like a sorghum Sudan, some very competitive, pretty heavy seeded rate, and we come off with a pretty clean field of small grains, no, I wouldn't look to be spraying that. Now, if we've got a pretty good mess on our hands in the small grain field, and maybe we didn't pay attention to some kind of weed control going into our small grains, then maybe we need to put a shot of glyphosate on there, wait 3 days, something like that, and come in and plant.
Great. Thanks, Dwayne. Heidi, you ready?
Well, yeah, I mean, Dwayne kind of took the words out of my mouth in terms of the thinking about weed control. Like, when we have so many growing degree days accumulated each day and so much sunlight this time of year, those summer suited species are just going to explode so quickly and provide excellent weed suppression. So, to be honest, maybe a hot take, it's a good spot to pull back on some inputs before a cover crop. You know, if you don't need to spray, don't spray in this situation. Now, it's a different story if you're planning to do double crop soybeans to harvest for grain, when you would like to baby them a little bit more. I agree about the summer forage grasses. Sudan grass, sorghum Sudan, the millets are all suitable, based, of course, manage according to your needs for the type of livestock you're trying to feed and your ability to harvest and store, right? But I also, when I'm thinking about cover crops, you know, beyond forages, say you don't have animals to feed, you don't have anyone to sell it to, what are your goals with the cover crop? Are you trying to just get weed suppression? Are you trying to build up nitrogen fertility in the soil for your next crop, for example? Are you trying to pull up phosphorus from deeper in the soil? So there's options based on what you're after. This is a great time of year to put in some diversity that you usually can't get if you're planting after a corn or soybean crop. So a mix of, you know, one of those funny mixes that's got sunflowers and annual ryegrass and some buckwheat and some sorghum Sudan grass. You know, something with some diversity would be really great if you have the ability at this point in the rotation.
Yeah, I think both of those are great points, and I was going to mention what Dwayne mentioned first. But anyhow, just to finish up on that a little bit, one thing that when you're doing cover crops, if you're going to use them for forage or just for cover, one thing to consider is the timeliness. Just make sure that you're absolutely ready when the crop comes off to get the cover crop in. I think the longer that we leave that wait, the more problems that we're going to have there. And in fact, to Heidi, what she was saying about different mixtures for what you're concerned with, you know, nitrogen fixation, soil aggregation, nutrient uptake, and, you know, what you're concerned with there. A tool that I always find fun to play around with is the Northeast Cover Crop Council's species selector tool. You can play around with that and gain some good information about what you want to plant in terms of your soil type and everything. So that works really well for that.
Yeah. I don't think you guys left me much to add, right? I can throw a couple "it depends" in here. But one of the things I think, and maybe I'm going in a different direction, but one of my biggest hangups and one of the concerns I have most is when we leave things fallow after small grains, right? We don't necessarily think about all the time of well, I got other stuff going on. I'm not going to do anything with it. That's why I really think that spraying or that cover crop or something is really important, because like they mentioned, any of these weeds that are underneath there, if we release that and we let them go, I mean, this is a huge thing for mare's tail or palmer or water hemp or any of those things that may be underneath there. And so that's my biggest caution to folks is we have to scalp that field to figure out what makes sense, right? And if we're going to try to go into beans or something next year after this, I think that gives us maybe that opportunity for like a grass crop so that we can control some of these broadleaves in the fall or whatever we may need to, right? If we're in a pretty good situation that we're managing our weeds, now we look at the species and the diversity. But I guess my big takeaway would be know what you're doing in 2027, right? I know that's hard to say, but today, July 1, July 4, What's that going to be in April of 2027, and then track it back a little bit of what we should accomplish between now and then?
One thing, we did talk about double crop beans a little bit there. As far as my geography, I am just about at the northern fringe of where double crop beans are tried. And I say tried. A lot of folks have tried them maybe, and not with a lot of success. We just tend to be a little bit late getting our small grain, especially the wheat, off to be able to get double crop beans in. And I'm assuming, Aaron, you're probably off. That's off the target for you in your geography, correct?
Absolutely. No double crop beans in the Northwest.
Yeah. Justin, how about down in your neck of the woods? Anybody trying that down there?
Yeah, so we do. I'll be kind of honest. The problem that we have with double crop beans is the yield is so low, right? Seed costs are high. The yield is so low. If we're looking at a full season bean of a yield of maybe 45 to 50, by the time we give up that early season and we get into this hotter, drier time of year, the deer start cruising, and it's kind of hard to pencil some of that stuff out unless you just have extra seed or you're doing something, with a Roundup Ready 1 or something like that. I mean, maybe those folks do. And I've seen some people do forage beans, right? I mean, that's an option that you can put in after this, and you're looking to chop them and use them for livestock or something. But I would say it's pretty uncommon that I'm not seeing a lot of double crop beans. Yeah, and I think, so Heidi, you touched on that. Would you want to, tell us a little bit more about what standard practices are for that if someone would like to look into it briefly?
Yeah, sure. So for double crop soybeans, right, if you have the ability to move to narrower rows to facilitate canopy closure quicker, since we have a shorter growing season, that's always recommended as a best practice. So switch to drilling the beans if you can. It's recommended to increase your seeding rate up to 180,000 to 200,000 seeds dropped, compared to like 130 to 150 for full season beans, just to compensate for the shorter growing season that we have. I believe you have a whole episode, Justin, just about double crop soybeans that maybe our listeners can go visit.
Yeah, in my Rolodex, remember? In my mind, I keep the season 4, episode 16. We have a full session on double cropping beans. It's going to talk about herbicides. It's going to talk about fertility. It's going to talk about species and planting and varieties. So, yeah, check that out if you're more interested. Thanks, Heidi. So as we kind of move to a close here in our conditions and question for the day or the week, anybody have any final thoughts or anything they'd like to share before we wrap up?
I think one of the biggest things we tried to drill home was if you are thinking about doing anything after small grain harvest to get, whether that's a double crop bean in, whether that's a cover crop of some kind, timing is everything, right? If you're looking for that forage, get it in as quickly as possible. If you're putting beans in, do it timely. So don't wait, have your ducks lined up and get it done as quickly as you can.
All right. As we close, I'm gonna say we also have the Penn State Extension Wheat Quality Contest again this year. This would be its second year. And so if you are harvesting wheat and you do have an interest in that, I would contact your local extension office or agronomist and ask them how you can get involved. And this goes through Daniela Carrijo's lab and our grain folks. And what they're going to do is they're going to test your grain, give you quality, enter it in the contest at Ag Progress Day so people can see it. So if that's something you're curious about, reach out to Extension. We'd be happy to connect. Otherwise, we hope to see you soon on the next episode of the Agronomy Highlights podcast. Thanks, everybody.